Now I'm going to speak and you're going to shut up, young ones. But I want you to hear what we have to say today. I have a budget of less than 15 minutes, and I want to greet you and to express my appreciation and gratitude for your honoring me to be your keynote speaker today. A very historical occasion. I recognize that I stand in this position not as one meriting personal applause for the founding body to which ACHA can trace its roots, but rather to speak only as a representative of a number of community leaders, and any of whom justifiably could say, I should be standing here to speak on behalf of the former Black Heritage Association. Anyone, they're sitting in the room. So it's a privilege for me to be chosen. History tells us where we have been. The present tells us where we are now. But only vision and imagination can provide a glimpse of where we ought to be next. My purpose here today is to support the African Canadian Heritage Association effort to plot its future trajectory by reflecting upon its historical roots in the Black Heritage Association as a valued social coordinate for the community. That's what I intend to do. Now, a good place to begin our reflection is to redraw the picture of the socio-economic landscape out of which the Black Heritage Association emerged and why it did. To begin, we can say that the early organization of the year 1969 did not develop out of a poetic thinking or out of social idealism, but rather it arose as a necessary response to intense social provocation on the part of the host society, in which the majority of people of color were systematically unwelcome. Not only was it very difficult for a person of color to find positions of equal opportunity in the society, but also nearly impossible for their children, our children, to feel a sense of belonging and acceptance in the school cities of Ontario. A people without economic, social, or political power at the time. Decisions were made on our behalf outside our community by power brokers who neither respected our leaders, valued our children, nor perceived us as viable social entities. It was true that an early few from our community, after much loitering in the corridors of power, did manage to occupy back seats in the halls of junior authority, some at the price of denying themselves and us, or their people. Some, not all. However, irrespective of our variant cultures, the wider society simply grouped us as a people on the basis of our colors, our skin. We were pressed into oneness, not by forces of harmonious social cohesion, but by a sense of general exclusion that made us brothers and sisters in a common social adversity. It was against that background that diligent and conscious community observers such as Dr. Rudy Grant and Percival Anderson, observing in a sociological experiment black children rejecting black doors in favor of white ones, sounded the alarm that our children were in fact in crisis. Albert King, sitting here today, here is Elon there, a teacher and economist, and his wife, Lady Olive King, a librarian at the time at the University of Toronto, instantly answered the call by summoning meetings at their Thorncliffe Park apartment to discuss with friends the implications of Dr. Grant and Anderson's findings. Among those present, as I can recall, were Agri and Olive, Edgar Rainford and Marjorie Rainford, I think George Craig, Dr. Lyndhurst Pena, Carol Wayner, Professor Horace Campbell, Horace Neater, and this speaker. Searching for possible explanation as to why black children would reject black doors while selecting white ones, the group settled on the hypothesis that the cause of the behavior was a serious lack of positive self-acceptance on the parts of the black child, lacking in a sense of confirming personal identity. The group reasoned that were the problem to be left unresolved, soon the descendants of black people in Canada, along with their community, would be socially adrift and permanently so. The questions the concerned group then faced were how to find a solution to the problem and how to implement it. Prior to our contemplation, the pattern of black community response to group threat was a faceless, leaderless multitude, protesting and losing the impact of his message in the din and clamor of collective community hysteria, but having nothing achieved and measurable. That was the state of people. Receiving permission from sympathetic politician and clergyman Bill Phillips to meet in the Thorncliffe Park Chapel, the concerned group met to hash out a statement of objective, select an operating name, select a committee, a president, then to begin its corrective work of social intervention. This speaker suggested the name Black Heritage Association, to which the group unanimously agreed. It then elected Professor Lyndhurst Pena as Secretary of Records to document and preserve the history of the organization, and elected this speaker as his first president. His successor would be Agri King later on. Drawing the conclusion that there was a critical link between positive self-concept and social advancement, Black Heritage Association took the following 5 decisions. 1, that and culture to children of the black community was mainly the responsibility of black people. 2, that such a delicate and life-shaping undertaking could not be left to the discretion of unsympathetic others. 3, that under no circumstance should the organization accept any form of funding from any level of government Clark. But rather should finance its activities exclusively by fundraising within the black community. Now, 4, that enrollment in black heritage programs should be free. And 5, that no person other than the organization's dedicated spokesperson would be authorized to provide the media with information about ACHA's activities. It's an important, very important decision. There was, however, one confounding problem facing the group, namely, that is that of knowing no black history, nor even knowing how to have gone about researching it in 1969. Nobody knew anything about that. Fortunately, this speaker, desperate to find a historical basis for his own self-worth, as well as to reverse the increasing sense of inferiority that his own 4- and 5-year-old daughters had already begun to display, he had begun desperately to search for facts about black people. To do so, he had gone into the main library of the University of Toronto in search of any information about any black king, if one ever existed. While he did not find any material to that effect, except for a short, unflattering statement about Ethiopia's Emperor Haile Selassie, he did come upon an 18th century book entitled In the Beginning by Gerald Massey. As the first person to have requested the rare book, this speaker was treated with great suspicion and curiosity by the female librarian who delivered the frail document on a metal plate to him, like a serving a turkey. Upon his opening the ancient book, he immediately observed that if he had tried to turn the pages, the leaves would fragment like a broken biscuit. Consequently, he decided to copy the pages one by one as he read them. It would take numerous visits and requests to copy a substantial part of the book by hand. The author of the book, an eminent 18th century English Egyptologist, had carefully documented the history of Africa with a focus upon Egypt. The contents were so alarming that it had already altered the speaker's self-perception by the time Black Heritage Association could have needed the data. With that limited information, we began Saturday morning Black History and Culture classes in the Thorncliffe Park Chapel. Quickly we found teams of people from house to house, researching the subject and meeting to refine it into a curriculum and raising funds. Among the many on the front line were such persons as Alvin French, Edward Hill, Marie King, Beverly Salmon, Claudette Nita, Marlene Green, to name a few. In spite of our varied lands and culture and origins, there was never a sense of difference among the participants. We were not Trinidadians, Barbadians, Devetians, Black Canadians, Jamaicans, or Guyanese. We were one in mind and purpose, and we profoundly liked each other till this day. With that underlying spirit of oneness, Black Heritage Association would snowball into a frontline warrior for the souls of Black children. The first crop of success stories would be the children of those early classes. To date, we have no record of a single child from that group who has failed in life or failed to develop a self-confident, positive attitude in society. Not one. Now, for the challenges. The challenges are going to be great. Very great. There was a problem. I heard about the breaking up of the organization, people leaving it, so I want to deal with this. From within, there was the impatience of eager talent, unable to wait its turn for captaincy, that constantly unsteadied the ship. But careful, sensitive leadership kept the black vessel afloat and on course. From outside, the society's ever-present fear that organized blacks meant revolutionary social militancy remained nervous and most watchful, especially on our telephones. But we were never discouraged. We never feared, and we never surrendered. We never gave up. The evolution of Black Heritage Association to become the African Canadian Heritage Association is the ultimate testimony to the success of the early enterprise to correct our warped self-identities. For the new name, ACHA, recognizes that while a person from America is an American, one from Brazil is Brazilian, and one from China is Chinese, there is no place called Black Land.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
The native home of Black people. ACHA has gone on to removing that exclusionary Black identity and to replace it with the name of our people according to our lands, languages, families, and nations. To reach this far is a credit to committed leadership, which by the evidence of this gathering continues to move the youth, African contingent, Canadian, forward with conviction, courage, vigilance, and vision. We had begun with a vision too. We converted it into a plan. We had put in place measures of effectiveness, meaning that you get results, but you can't measure it by money. Effectiveness. We encourage the nurturing of leadership and set a course of community, self-support, and reliance, then pass it on. So your leadership has kept a close eye on the evolution of social patterns of importance to this community. So, with confidence in yourselves and faith in the inspiring wisdom and the power of God, which I didn't hear mentioned here today, you have come this far on history's road as a vibrant ACHA. Your legacy to posterity will be a continuing positive transformation of our community by calling upon the tools of our history, mentorship, cultures, and faith in God Almighty. I therefore thank you on behalf of the early founders for the privilege of standing here. When I first stood to speak at Black Heritage, I was 30 years old. Today I'm 70, almost going to 71.